As many of you probably know by now, Gamepass offers a phenomenal deal. Microsoft boasts of having over 100 plus high quality games to offer, and while there is definitely more than 100 games on this service, I want to see how many of them are actually high quality. So first off, we have Moonlighter, and it seems like most of the negativity in these reviews comes from saves not working properly. So hopefully between the time saves were written and the time I'm playing this game, this issue was fixed. But I guess there's only one way to find out. So first things first, this game is loud, like very loud. If you're not on PC, I'm not sure on console if you have an option to change the sound settings. If you're on console, turn down your speakers before you launch this game. So with that out of the way, once you begin a new file, you are greeted with one of the longest exposition dumps I have ever seen. Exposition dumps aren't inherently bad, but the story of this game, honestly, to me, isn't too interesting, so not having an option to skip kinda sucked. But with that being said, I can understand the use of it, especially being a smaller studio. If you want to share a big story in your game, it's probably best to do this if you don't have as much capital on hand. You can definitely cut some costs using a method like this. Needless to say, I'm not the biggest fan of the story, but I am impressed with the tutorial. To be honest, it's not overwhelming, it doesn't present a massive amount of information and drives you away from the game. It explains the core mechanics perfectly in my opinion, but that's where most of my positives for the game are. So if you can't already tell, this game is a roguelike with a bit of RPG elements baked into it. If you ever played Hades, it's essentially that style of play, but the gameplay is much simpler, which it can be a good thing if your game is simple. Like, look at something like Stardew Valley. There's not many mechanics to the game, but it's beloved for a good reason. But with this game being a roguelike, you really want to put a focus on combat and make it feel good and fluid, neither of which are apparent to me in this game. After the combat tutorial teaches you everything it needs to, you are thrown into a force fail room, which is fine, not a big deal. I would like to have stood a chance, but hey, I understand. You gotta do what you gotta do. Once you inevitably fail this room, because I promise you, with the starting gear, you are not getting past it, you're thrown into the hub world and greeted by this old man. I don't think the game clarifies who this person is to your character, but he serves as your guide to essentially explain the overworld mechanics. Basically, the core mechanic of the game is exploring the dungeon and trying to survive with the loot you obtained. Then, once you get out of the dungeon, you go back to your shop to sell these items you found exploring the dungeon. And to be honest, I hate this mechanic. At first, I thought this was pretty cool. There's actually like a whole market economy in which you can flood the market with certain items, and that'll cause the price to drop. You have to basically gauge what people are willing to pay for these items specifically. But the problem is you have to guess the price of these items, and the process of selling them is so painfully slow. I would understand if this aspect of the game was like a side piece of it, just not the main focus, because the only way for you to improve your character and get more powerful is by gold and selling these items. Now with that out of the way, we get to talk about the combat, which is usually my favorite part, but oh my god, this combat sucks. It is terrible. You get two types of attacks. One's like a power attack, or with the sword and shield, it's a block with X. And with A, you have like a basic swipe attack or poke attack if you're using a spear. But it's so painfully one-dimensional. You can only attack in 4 directions, up, down, left, right, and that's it. You attack, you block, and you dodge. And don't get me wrong, there's plenty of games out there that are simple and enjoyable when it's tastefully done. Said the game being as simple as it is, the boss fights are as enjoyable as you can imagine. So overall, I really don't have much more to say about this game. I wanted to like it, I really did. I put in about 3 hours and I just could not find a redeeming quality about it. I can say with full confidence, I do not recommend this game whatsoever. If you want to pick up a roguelike, I highly recommend Hades. In my opinion, it's just a better version of this game. So next up, we have Curse of the Dead Gods. It actually seems like a majority of the reviews are positive, so that's a good sign. There are a couple in here complaining about the sound not working, so let's hope that doesn't happen. And it seems like a lot of people are comparing this to Hades, which is a good sign. Hades is a great game, so I'm excited to see what this game has to offer. So first things first, the art style in this game is amazing. I'm a huge fan of cel-shaded games, and even though it's not immediately apparent this is cel-shaded, I think this intro cutscene is really well done for how simple it is. It gives you a good idea of the situation while just being simple. There's not much story in the game from what I can tell, but from what I gather, you're an explorer and you got trapped in this temple. Another big thing to mention, maybe not big to you, but it was very aggravating to me. This game does not like being recorded in full screen, especially. Usually I like to review the tutorial, but in this case, the footage looks like this, what you're seeing on screen now, so I don't really want to include it. But rest assured, it's actually a good tutorial, which is impressive. Especially considering how many mechanics this game has, it explains them very well and in a very short amount of time, which I really respect. And let me just say this now, I played a good 3 hours of this game, and it is a stark contrast to Moonlighter. It is so much better and so much more well done. You can actually attack sideways, which, believe it or not, adds so much more depth to the game. And since your character is always dual wielding his weapons, you can get combos off. There's combos in the game, and there's combos you can essentially make up on the fly. The game really rewards you for playing quick and aggressively. There is a roll mechanic and a parry mechanic, and both of these are so well done. It's so satisfying to hit a parry, which in turn weakens the enemy and allows you to do more damage. And the roll is just that, it's a roll. If you time it correctly, you can get a quote-unquote perfect roll, which allows you to restore some of the stamina. Those are the little orbs below my character. The stamina is required to roll, attack, do certain combos. So with that out of the way, we can get into my favorite part about the game. The combat in this game feels so good. As you explore the dungeon, you're going to find different random weapons, which is a big quality Moonlighter lacked in my opinion. The biggest part of roguelikes to me is being able to go back and each time you explore the dungeon, it's a random run. Like, there's new experiences to be found each time you run the dungeon. And by using weapons as this form of randomness, it's great. I replayed the intro to this game about 3 times, and each time I replayed it, no experience was the same. I always ended up with a different loadout and different abilities. So needless to say, I thoroughly enjoyed this game. It's a great time, especially if you played a game like Hades and it left you like wanting more like a lot of people, including me. This is such a great game to pick up and just play. If you have Game Pass and you're a fan of roguelikes, you are doing yourself a disservice by not trying this game. So with that said, we are on to the boss fights, and I think these are so well done. This fight here is in the last starter dungeon, so it definitely was a bit difficult, but I ended up getting a really powerful weapon, and that allowed me to do a lot of damage. I did end up tanking a lot of damage, but if you end up getting a good build throughout your run, you can do things like this. So far, I've encountered 3 bosses. This is definitely the hardest of the lot. She put me through hell. But with this being the last starter dungeon, I think it's a good segue into the rest of the game, especially if the difficulty keeps increasing. Like one of the reviews said, it's such a shame that this game came out at the same time as Hades because it is a roguelike, but it's so different and so unique in its own ways that it deserves so much love. The bosses are well done, and basic combat just feels so good once you get used to the flow of it. I'm a huge fan of this genre, and finding a good roguelike is difficult, trust me. It's not a common thing, and this is just a breath of fresh air when it comes to the genre. If I had to slap a rating on this game, I'd give it a 9 out of 10 so far. It's definitely subject to change, but I can only see myself becoming more impressed. So please, if you're a fan of roguelikes, or if you're not a fan of roguelikes and you like Hades, play this game. It is so worth your time. There's so many more little nuances to the game. There's different dungeons to explore, different bosses as you go through the dungeons, different enemy types, different attacks, different weapons. But that's really all I have to say for now. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you for watching. If you really enjoyed, think of subscribing. I'm planning on making this a series on my channel. And if you're feeling just that extra bit nice, like and comment. It helps so much with the video. I work really hard on these and it takes a lot of time, so it's very much appreciated. But that's going to be it for me. So thank you again.